His success lived in tall buildings, long meetings, and cold marble floors. When people said his name, they spoke of wealth, not warmth. But all the money in the world could not bring back the sound of his daughter's laughter. 3 years ago, a car crash had taken the life of his wife, Maya, and left their little girl, Lily, unable to walk. She had been 8 then. Now she was 11, quiet and pale, spending her days in a big room filled with sunlight and silence. Ethan built ramps, hired the best nurses, and filled the house with machines to make her comfortable. But still, Lily seemed to drift farther away, like a small boat lost from the shore. Ethan's mansion stood far from the city, surrounded by tall pine trees and a black iron gate. But inside, the biggest fear was not thieves or intruders. It was loneliness. Ethan told himself the cameras were for safety. The real truth was that he was terrified. Terrified something might happen to Lily again, something he would not see in time to stop. When the nurses came and went, none of them stayed long. Lily did not talk much, and Ethan's strict rules scared most of them away. One morning, his manager suggested a new housemaid named Claire. Her record was spotless. She had experience caring for children. She needed steady work, and she didn't ask too many questions. Ethan nodded and approved her without emotion.
Oh.
Claire arrived on a rainy Thursday. She was young, in her mid-20s, with calm eyes and a quiet voice. She wore simple clothes and carried her belongings in a single small suitcase. Ethan met her in the grand hall, where every sound seemed to echo. He gave short instructions and explained the rules clearly. She nodded to each one without interrupting. Later that day, Ethan watched her from his office monitor. He had a secret control room behind a false panel, filled with screens showing every part of the house. It told himself it was only to make sure Lily was safe. Yet when he saw Claire move through the house, something about her presence caught his attention. She walked slowly, kindly, as if she respected each room. She noticed the dust on the edges of picture frames and the way Lily's blanket never reached her feet. Lily at first said nothing to Claire. She kept her eyes on her window while Claire dusted her bookshelves or folded her clothes. Still, Claire never seemed bothered. She hummed softly to herself, songs without words. That evening, Ethan saw through the camera how she placed a small vase of wildflowers beside Lily's bed. Lily turned her head, surprised. Claire smiled but did not speak. By the third day, Lily's nurse reported something strange. Lily had asked for her breakfast early and wanted to eat in the garden. Ethan tried to hide his surprise. Through the cameras, he watched as Claire gently pushed Lily's wheelchair along the garden path. They stopped by the fountain, watching the water. Lily smiled for the first time in months. Ethan leaned closer to the screen. For years, he had tried to fix everything with money, treatments, and experts. Yet this simple woman seemed to reach his daughter just by being near. When Claire laughed, it was light and pure. When Lily spoke, her voice came out uncertain, but real. Still, Ethan felt uneasy. He did not like surprises, and people always had reasons for being kind. At night, he increased the brightness of the cameras and added another one in the hallway near Lily's door. He convinced himself he was just protecting his child, though a small voice inside whispered that he was protecting his heart too. The mansion began to change in small ways. The halls smelled of bread and coffee instead of disinfectant. Curtains were drawn open. Lily's laughter sometimes reached Ethan's office while he worked. For the first time, he paused during his long hours to listen to it. It felt like sunlight touching a part of him that had been cold too long. Yet even as hope slowly entered the house, Ethan's fear grew stronger. The more he cared, the more he dreaded losing what was left. That night, he looked at Lily's camera feed and saw her asleep. Claire stood beside her bed, whispering something he could not hear. Ethan leaned forward, studying every movement. There was something else in Claire's eyes, something deeper than duty. It was warmth, but also sorrow. Ethan watched, uncertain whether it gave him comfort or fear. As the clock passed midnight, he turned off the lights in his office but not the monitors. The blue glow bathed his tired face. For the first time, he wondered what he might find if he kept watching. He told himself it was only for safety. But somewhere deep inside, he already knew he was watching for something more. Ethan pretended to work in his office, but often his eyes turned to the glowing screens in front of him. He watched how Claire smiled with patience each time Lily made a mistake. Lily was asking about her mother. Later that night, the house grew dark. In Lily's room, Claire was adjusting the blanket over the sleeping child. She moved quietly, almost lovingly. Then she turned toward the hallway camera, paused, and whispered something into the air. Her face looked tired and filled with emotion. Ethan leaned forward. The screen flickered for a moment and went black, only to return again. This time she was gone. His daughter once looked to him for safety, but now she looked at Claire for happiness. A few days later, Claire carried Lily to the garden again. The weather was bright and the sky a deep blue. They sat under the willow tree near the pond. Ethan turned away from the screens for a moment and stood before the large window in his study. Outside, the rain had started again. There was gentle care in her every movement. For the first time, Ethan felt trapped between doubt and hope. Watching her now brought no clear answers. It only left him with the strange ache of wanting to believe that goodness could come without reason, that trust could exist without proof. Yet life had taught him how quickly warmth could turn to loss. As the night deepened and thunder rolled in the distance, Ethan stayed in front of the screens long after the rest of the house had fallen asleep. Still, as her soft voice carried faintly from Lily's room, something inside him whispered that she might not be the danger at all, might be the fear that he could still feel. A heavy storm came over the city one evening. The sky turned gray, and the wind began to shake the trees around the mansion. Inside, the lights flickered, and the sound of rain hit the windows like small stones. Ethan sat in his control room in front of the screens, the blue glow lighting his face. Did not want to sleep. The storm reminded him too much of the night he lost his wife. He kept checking the camera feeds again and again to make sure Lily was safe in her room. Claire had made soup earlier and brought it to Lily before the power started to fail. Now, as thunder rolled across the valley, Ethan saw her sitting beside Lily's bed, reading a story. Her calm voice seemed to make the child forget the storm. Ethan turned up the volume slightly and listened. Claire told Lily about a little bird learning to fly again after breaking its wing. Lily was listening with wide eyes, her small hands holding her blanket close. Suddenly the screens started to flicker. The sound cut out. Ethan leaned closer and adjusted the controls. For a few seconds, all cameras turned to static. He felt a surge of panic. His house was filled with cameras and technology, but at that moment, he felt powerless. He waited until the power came back fully, and when it did, the picture returned to Lily's room. What he saw next made his breath stop. Claire was sitting on the side of the bed with a small box open in her hands. Inside was a necklace with a silver heart. She showed it to Lily, who reached out to touch it with curiosity. Then Claire opened the locket, and Ethan saw a small photograph inside. He pressed his face close to the screen. It was a picture of his late wife, Maya, smiling at the camera. And beside her stood a younger girl who looked almost exactly like Claire. Ethan froze. He could not understand what he was seeing. He felt both confusion and anger rush through him. Why did she have a photo of Maya? Who was that girl beside her? Is it really Claire as a child? He stayed there staring, refusing to blink. Claire then wiped a tear from her cheek, kissed the necklace, and placed it around Lily's neck. After a few minutes, she helped the girl back in bed and turned off the bedside lamp. The screen dimmed, but Ethan did not move. His hands trembled slightly. All this time he had thought Claire was just a kind stranger. Everything seemed like a secret plan. He did not know what to think. The next morning, the sky was clear again, but Ethan's thoughts were clouded. He asked Claire to meet him in the garden. The air was cool, and the wet grass smelled of rain. She came quietly, her hands folded in front of her. Ethan looked serious and tired. He spoke in a low voice. He told her that he had seen something through the cameras and he wanted the truth. Claire did not try to deny anything. She looked down and sighed before she answered. She explained that many years ago, she had worked as a caregiver at the same clinic where Maya once visited her ill mother. Maya had been kind and helped her through that hard time. They became close friends, almost like sisters. When Maya married Ethan, they lost touch, but Maya had written her one last letter after Lily was born. She had promised Claire that if anything ever happened to her, she wanted someone who loved Lily without greed or fame to be nearby for her sake. When Claire learned from the news about Maya's accident and Lily's condition, she tried to reach out but could not find the way. She believed Ethan would never accept help from someone with her simple background, and applied for the job as a housemaid. She only wanted to keep her promise to Maya. Ethan stood silent. His heart beat heavily. All the anger that had filled him began to slip away, replaced by guilt. He asked her why she never told him. She said she did not want him to think she came for money or pity. She came only for Lily. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. The sun broke through the passing clouds, throwing soft light over the garden. He saw tears in Claire's eyes, not of regret but of relief. She reached into her pocket and held out the same necklace. She said it was Maya's gift to her long ago and that she had kept it safe all these years. Ethan took it with shaking hands. For the first time, he realized that all this time, while he watched Claire suspiciously, she had been doing exactly what he had tried to do: protect his daughter. Everything he had doubted was built on fear, not truth. Lily, from the balcony above, called to them. Her voice was light and joyful. She wanted them to come see the rainbow forming after the storm. Ethan looked up at her, then back at Claire. For the first time, he managed a small, honest smile. The secret had been heavy, but now it had brought a truth neither of them expected. As they walked back toward the house, the mansion seemed warmer than before. The fear that once ruled Ethan's heart started to lose its strength. The cameras still watched from the corners, but he no longer felt the same comfort from them. Somehow he knew that the real safety in his home did not come from the machines. It came from the people who cared enough to stay when everything else had fallen apart. The morning after the storm was calm and bright. The air smelled fresh, and the trees outside the mansion glistened with dew. Ethan woke up earlier than usual. For the first time in years, the weight on his chest felt a little lighter. The truth about Claire still echoed in his mind. He had spent half the night thinking about her words. She had come because she had made a promise out of love and loyalty. He walked down the long hallway, past the cameras that once made him feel safe. Now they only reminded him of how deeply he had lived in fear. He stopped by Lily's room. Through the half-open door, he saw his daughter still asleep, the silver heart necklace resting against her chest. Claire sat on the chair beside her, with a book in her lap, half asleep herself. Realized that for the first time, there was peace in that room. A few hours later, the house woke to the smell of breakfast. Claire moved about the kitchen with calm hands, humming under her breath. Lily giggled as she tried to help by holding spoons and passing napkins. It was a simple but lively scene, one the mansion had not seen in a long time. Ethan joined them and sat down at the table. Lily looked surprised, but happy. They ate together in quiet comfort. Claire asked Ethan how he liked his toast and poured him tea before eating her own. It felt strange to sit like this, not as a master and maid, but as people sharing a small moment of peace. Whenever Ethan looked at his daughter, he felt something inside him begin to heal. Later that day, he decided to review the camera recordings. The habit was still there, but his purpose felt different. Instead of searching for faults or lies, he replayed small scenes he had missed. He saw Claire teaching Lily to paint, helping her brush through bright colors, laughing when the girl accidentally left a red streak on her own face. He saw her lifting Lily carefully from the wheelchair to the couch, moving with pure care. He saw how many evenings Lily slept peacefully because Claire sang to her. As Ethan watched these moments, his eyes softened. Each recording was a lesson about kindness and patience. He had spent years watching to catch danger, but now he was seeing love in its quiet form. But everything that brought life back to his daughter came from someone he had almost pushed away. The next day, Ethan told his security manager to reduce the number of cameras in the private areas of the house. He said the house should feel like a home, not a guarded palace. The man looked surprised, but Ethan's tone left no room for discussion. When the work was done, the house already felt more open. There were still a few cameras left for safety, but most rooms were now unseen by anyone except those who lived there. As the days passed, the bond between the three of them grew stronger. Claire sometimes joined Ethan and Lily for afternoon walks in the garden. She always made Lily laugh with her small stories about her childhood. Ethan listened quietly, admiring the way she spoke. Each time Lily smiled, he found a piece of hope he thought was lost forever. One evening, the power went out for a short time. The house grew dim except for the light of a few candles. Lily asked her father to tell a story. Ethan hesitated at first, but Claire encouraged him softly. So he told a simple story about a man who forgot how to smile until someone taught him to again. As he spoke, his voice grew warmer, and Lily leaned against him, comforted by his words. When the lights returned, he saw Claire smiling with tears in her eyes. In that light, Ethan finally understood how much he had missed this feeling of connection. After Lily went to bed, Ethan found Claire in the hallway. He thanked her for what she had done, not only for Lily but for him too. She looked down, modest as always, and said she had only done what she promised to a friend. Ethan nodded, his voice quiet, saying that her promise had saved them both. From that day on, the cameras in Ethan's control room stood silent most of the time. He still visited the room now and then, not to watch but to think. The screens were blank, their glow replaced by the light spilling through the windows nearby. It no longer felt like a place of fear, it felt like a place of change. Next to the necklace, Claire had returned to him. It became a reminder that love could live beyond loss, that protection was not about watching every move, but about being present. The mansion slowly turned from a space of isolation into a home filled with simple joys. Laughter replaced silence. Routines became rituals of peace. Lily often asked her father to join their daily activities, and Ethan began to understand that the best moments were the ones he did not record. Being there, truly there, was enough. When night came, the house no longer felt haunted by years of sorrow. The sound of music and soft voices filled the air. Ethan knew he had changed, not because he had planned it, but because someone had shown him what trust looked like. In that quiet house, surrounded by the people who had shown him love in its simplest form, I finally found what he had been searching for all along. Months passed quietly after that stormy night. The mansion that had once felt cold now carried warmth in every hallway. The smell of fresh bread and flowers often filled the air. Laughter became common again, not forced or polite, but natural and bright. Lily's health improved a little, her cheeks no longer pale, and her spirit lighter than before. Ethan often found her singing from her room. The notes floated down the corridor like sunlight. Claire continued caring for Lily with the same steady kindness. She no longer seemed like a worker in the house. She moved as if she belonged there. Lily looked at her not as an employee, but as family. Ethan noticed this every day and felt something deep stir inside him, something both gentle and grateful. There were still moments when he felt guilt for how he had once doubted her. The cameras he had installed to protect his world had also trapped him inside walls made from fear. Now he understood that safety without trust was only another kind of prison. One mild afternoon, Ethan decided to remove the cameras completely. He walked into the control room that had held him captive for years. The same house he could now find laughter in without a single screen. He stood for a long moment, remembering the man he had been, staring at these same images filled with suspicion. Then he turned off every feed one by one. The room grew quiet, and the soft click of buttons became the sound of freedom. Only one recording remained. It was the most recent one, from Lily's birthday last week. He hesitated before pressing play. On the screen, Lily sat by the piano wearing a bright blue dress. Claire stood beside her, smiling as she turned the pages of the music sheet. Ethan walked into view a moment later, handing Lily a small crown of white flowers. They laughed together when the flowers slipped sideways on her head. In the video, Lily started to play the piano, her hands moving with more confidence than before. Claire joined her voice with the notes, soft and clear. Ethan on the screen stood close, watching with pride. He sat down and let the recording play until the end. When it finished, the room fell into silence again, but it was not an empty silence. It was full of memory. He closed the laptop and reached for the small camera device sitting on the desk. He picked it up, opened the window, and tossed it into the garden below. For the first time in years, he did not feel fear. He felt peace. That evening, the three of them ate in the garden. The sky was painted in shades of orange and gold as the sun set behind the trees. Lily kept talking about her plans for the next day. She wanted to paint her favorite flower, the yellow daisy that grew near the fence. Claire smiled and promised to find new brushes for her in the morning. Ethan listened to them and thought how much life had changed. Once his days had been about deals and success, now they were about laughter and small moments that felt more valuable than anything he had ever owned. After dinner, Lily grew sleepy, and Claire wheeled her inside to prepare for bed. Ethan stayed outside a little longer, looking at the lights shining from the windows. The air carried the soft sound of a piano from inside. He closed his eyes and listened, no longer through a monitor, but with his own mind open and at peace. The past still existed in pieces of pain, but now it lived beside hope instead of regret. Later, Claire joined him on the balcony. They stood in quiet for a moment, the night sky full of stars above them. Ethan thanked her again for everything she had done, his voice low but steady. They both smiled, understanding that their house was now more than a shelter. It had become a place of healing for all three of them. Inside, Lily called them to join her for one last song before bedtime. Ethan and Claire entered the living room together. Lily sat at the piano, her fingers ready. When she began to play, the gentle music filled every corner. Ethan stood beside the piano, his hand resting lightly on Lily's shoulder. Claire sang along in her quiet tone that balanced perfectly with the notes. The candles by the window flickered against the walls. When the final note faded, Ethan looked around the room. It was the same mansion, with the same tall windows and wide hallways, but it no longer carried the weight of sorrow. It felt alive. The memories of fear and loss were still part of its story, but new memories had taken root, filled with laughter, trust, and courage. Before going to bed, Ethan went once more to the control room. The screens were still dark, the machines silent. He smiled and locked the room door for good. Then he turned and walked toward Lily's room, where he could hear her soft breathing as she slept. Claire was sitting beside her as usual, a quiet guardian of the house's peace. Ethan stood there for a while, feeling a calmness he had not known in years. He realized the cameras had once made him watch life from behind a glass, afraid to touch it. Now he lived within it, fully and without fear. That was the greatest protection he could ever give his daughter. As he switched off the lights and walked down the hall, he knew his house was no longer a place of isolation. It had become a home built on love, the kind that asked for nothing and gave everything in return.